Hey, it's me. So I'm not gonna do any enneagram reading right now. I kind of just want to talk about my head because it feels like it's getting progressively worse, and at the same time, like it's kind of the same. I think the medication is kind of working because most of the time, even though I have some negative thoughts or some ideation, some negative, tendencies. Like I'm still feeling pretty decent, right? I'm not feeling like shit unless I start thinking too much about, my life and not really like my life, but the fantasies I have, I guess, and like the things I would like to do to accomplish, and where I am at. It can be very frustrating. And yesterday I had kind of like a low point when I was going to bed, where I mean, usually happens just in my head. I can kind of control myself so it doesn't really extrapolate to like outside of my head. But it was a very intense moment where I'm feeling kind of like lost and frustrated about everything and anything, because I have had this little fantasy that's been with me for the past, I don't know, it's actually more than a few months at this point, and it is so it is kind of like the chief the biggest thing that the chief thing that is making me kind of like look at my life, and feel disappointed. I don't really know how to counter it because it's not something that I have always wanted. It's something that it just I started wanting like somewhat recently, and I don't even know if I actually want it for a fact or if I'm just attached to this fantasy because it is kind of like feeding my emotional needs. It's just me in a context where everything I want to be, everything I want to do, it is kind of like doable. It's possible, and it's happening. Yeah, it's more than doable because technically anything and everything is doable. You can do whatever you want, but you are like it's well, so it's doable, but like how likely is it, right? Particularly you have to take into account like geography, like where you are at, and there are things that are more likely to happen if you kind of like maybe born at a different place, you know not necessarily at a different time, but if I mean I would need the context in which I have always existed and I'm currently existing to be completely different. Only like a miracle would actually make some of these things actually, happen. And yet I kind of keep thinking about that. Even though, as I said, I don't even know if I really want that. So that's just, a conduit. There are many ways how, for you to, for example, for you to find yourself to be being successful, right? Success, it can come from many different avenues, from many different areas of your life. And ideally, you want, success in all of that. And like if you are, I don't know, if your head is in the right place, then it's easier. But my head is not. It doesn't seem to be, and I don't know what to do about it. What to do with it. It's just frustrating. I'm gonna say frustrating a lot because that is a low key way I've been feeling. Even though my head is kind of okay. It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm taking day by day. Like every day is a new day, a new journey, new opportunity. And the thing that kind of like sucks for me right now is that not only is this fantasy something that is making me feel shitty about my life, it is something that like I genuinely cannot let go. And as a consequence, I'm kind of like stuck in this loop where I am I kind of like I do a little bit better. Like one day I'm thinking about myself and my future in a more realistic, grounded way. But then what ends up occurring is that the fantasy comes back. And I was, for a hot minute in January, I was able to push it away. But like, that's over. I was a little, um, uh, I made a little progress outside of it, just sticking to my reality. But then, my head just simply shifted. I cycled. And this is actually something interesting to think about, because I was talking to my psychiatrist and I was talking about how I had kind of like cycled, and she was saying that, like, I don't know, she wouldn't say call it that, because it was more of like a hypomania, which is pretty much what has happened to me ever since I started taking medication. Ever since, I mean, some of the medication I have taken in the past, it has not been enough to remove like the intensity and like the worst decisions that come from mania. But the past couple of years, that's been the case. So yeah, but it was an interesting session. As I mentioned, she ended up spending more time with my parents than with me. But like everything what I had to say, I said it at the very beginning. So, and then because of I said what I said, that she brought them in so she could have a better perspective, better idea, but have a notion of what I am like, what I have been like. Because I have changed, but at the same time, it's the same. Like the conundrum I'm facing right now is the same one from so when I was 18. Actually, 18, I was still starting. It's still very passive, and then it became more active. I say towards like the towards like the end of 2016. So it's going to be 9 years that ultimately my head goes back to the same place. I can go around and have some moments of peace, but ultimately I come back to the same suicidal ideation state of mind. And I don't really know. It's just like every new day, it either helps, either it strengthens my motivation to keep existing, or it does the very opposite. And it just shows that, like, what is the point of pressing for this when it's always should be at this place. Like a realistic notion of success for me, it doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like it is. My head doesn't see that's being good enough, and there's nothing that I can do to change it. I say this because I have tried, and as I said, sometimes I'm doing a little bit better. I can ignore certain things, but then I ultimately go back to the same state of mind, and then the same desires, the same plans, the same same situation. And I'm kind of these past few days I've been mostly stuck here at this limbo, where on one hand I want to do it, and on the other I'm like, no, don't do it. I want to live life and see where this goes. I feel like that is kind of the thing. Like, if I could know if there was something coming my way, something good, something that would make me feel fulfilled and contented, happy, I could keep pushing. But there's nothing there. You cannot really tell the future. So I kind of don't really have anything. I could be kind of like brought forth by the possibility of something happening, but it's very unlikely. Particularly if, because that's the thing about getting older, is that some parents, they like you learn them all too well, so you know where you're going, you know where your hair is going, you know what the state of mind, when you can see it coming, and as it's happening, you can tell that, like, there are things you can do to make